All right, hello artists, good morning, and welcome to Art Adventures Live. My name is Mr. Andy, the studio programs manager here at Joslyn, which means I get to make art with people like you that come and visit our museum. Art Adventures is a drop-in art experience that happens weekly and is free for museum members every Friday morning at the museum throughout the year, normally with our friend Miss Therese, who might be watching along with us from home. During this time of social distancing, we're all doing what we can to keep each other safe. So we're all trying to stay as home as often as we can. So I will bring Art Adventures to you each week so we can make art together in the comfort of your own home. For a full list of upcoming Art Adventures, including new Art Adventures soon for July, please check out Joslyn's website at joslyn.org. And if you on that website, you'll also find a material list for each week's activity. If you do not have today's materials ready to make art as right now online, we'll post a recording of this video each week so you can gather your materials and then watch and make art when you have the time. Each week we will be inspired by a different artist or artwork from Joslyn's galleries and then create a masterpiece of your very own while learning how these artworks were made and what makes them special. On this week's art adventure, we're going to be looking at lots of works of art from Joslyn's galleries and learn about the parts of art, which are the elements of art. The elements of art are like tools artists use, or as my friend Miss Miranda likes to call them, the different art ingredients artists use to create a work of art. Like a chef or a baker, all artists use the same ingredients, but they use them in different ways to create works of art that are uniquely their own or express themselves in a personal way. Artists from all over the world and all throughout time use the same 7 elements of art differently in their art recipes to express new, exciting ideas. The 7 elements of art are line, texture, space, color, value, shape, and form. So let's spend a moment to fill up our recipe box with these 7 art elements, and then we're going to use these art elements to make your very own masterpiece. Artists use line in lots of different ways. There are countless different types of line. Some artists use line to create details. Other artists use line to create movement and action. Artists use lines to create energy. Artists can use lines to create pattern. Sometimes lines can connect and create shapes, another element of art. Artists, like you and artists can take all the shapes in the world and divide those shapes into 2 categories or 2 groups: geometric and organic. Geometric shapes are like math shapes: squares and rectangles, triangles, octagons, shapes with mathematical names. These shapes often are symmetrical or have hard edges. These types of shapes are great for describing things made by people. They're great for creating patterns or describing things like buildings, machines, or other things made in factories. The opposite group of shapes are often called organic shapes. These type of shapes are more free-form. These shapes can kind of go wherever they want. You might have to make up a name for organic shapes, like splat or blob or squiggle doodle. Organic shapes are often asymmetrical. They're perfect for describing things in nature, like the shapes of trees or animals. Organic shapes are great for describing people. Look at the shape of this person's hair. Organic shapes are great for describing parts of a landscape, like these rocks. The third part of art that we're going to talk about for your recipe box is texture. Texture is the way something feels, right? Sometimes artists create texture that is real, like on a work of sculpture that you can touch when you have permission. Other artists can create an illusion of texture. We can make a 2-dimensional painting. We can create an illusion of texture using elements of art like line, color, and value, like the illusion of the soft fur on this cat on the balcony. Everyone out there, take a moment and rub the top of your head. Rub the top of your head. Keep rubbing. Rub, 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 rub. Rub the other direction. Rub up the front and the back and the side. Now rub the end of your nose. Does the end of your nose feel like the top of your head? You people have hair on the top of your head. So if you're going to draw a picture of your head, you'll need to use lines to describe the texture of the hair on your head. Maybe it's curly. Maybe it's fuzzy, like mine. Maybe it's messy. But when you draw a picture of your nose is smooth. So you have to use lines to describe that smooth texture. So when we make our work of art in just a moment, we're going to create texture. Now for a tricky part of art. This next tricky part of art is called space. But not space like astronauts or astrophysicists, but space within a work of art. Or maybe the space that a work of art occupies, like a work of sculpture within a room. Some artists create an illusion of three-dimensional space within a two-dimensional painting using rules of perspective. So it looks like we can almost sit down right next to that Pasha and his tiger. Other artists create space by placing shapes and lines in a picture to create a background, a middle ground, and foreground. Look at this picture here by an artist named Grant Wood. Grant Wood was pretty smart. He knew he could show us lots of space by putting his horizon line, that's where the earth meets the sky up here, way at the top. Because they put this horizon line way at the top of this picture, we can see almost all of Iowa. If the horizon line was way down here by this field of little sprouts, we would not be able to see all these interesting details. And some of these details appeared to be close or near, and other details like this barn way off in the back appears far away. Those things that are far away are teeny tiny and close to the horizon line in the background. The things in the middle ground are a little bit bigger as they get closer, and the things down here in the bottom, in the foreground, are the biggest. So when we make our pictures, in just a moment, you can create space. The things that are close to you are going to be big, and the things that are far away are going to be teeny tiny. Form, our next part of art, form is an element of art that often is used to describe the shape of three-dimensional artworks, like this wooden sculpture in our galleries by Martin Puryear, or this ceramic sculpture by Roxanne Swinsel. Form can also be used to describe parts of a painting, like this picture of a man and a woman. Look at this woman and look at this man. This woman is painted with strong form. She appears to have mass. She's painted so I can almost squeeze her rounded arms. This man is pictured with less form, almost sketchy. I can actually almost see right through him. So he recedes or disappears into the background, focusing my attention on this woman, and I wonder, what is she thinking? Make room now in your recipe box for two more parts of art, the last two. These last two are parts of art are value and color. Value is a word that we use to describe the lightness or darkness within an artwork. Light and dark values can create contrast. Light and dark values can create drama. Make a picture up here very dramatic, like these moody dudes there. Light in this picture creates a focal point. My eyeball is drawn to that bright light, this hanging light bulb on this dark, dark street. My eyeball is drawn to that bright light like a moth to a lantern or deer stuck in headlights. And all these other details around that bright light are hidden in those dark shadows. Lastly, let's talk about color. Color is a powerful, powerful part of art. Color is so powerful it might even make you cry. Some artists use colors to express emotions, to tell people how they feel on the inside. Some artists use color to evoke emotions, to make the viewer, us, feel a certain way. Some colors are really happy, like birthday party colors, and some colors are more sad. Some colors give you lots of energy and make you feel very excited, and some colors are very mellow and calm. Some colors can even make you sweat. Colors in this painting warm colors like red and yellow and orange. Some colors are more cool. If you look at this painting, you might need to put on a warm jacket as you look at the cool blue, green, and purple. Artists mix colors to create new colors. We can mix our primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, to make secondary colors, purple, orange, and green. We can even mix our primary colors with our secondary colors to make tertiary colors. These are the 7 elements of art: line, shape, space, color, texture, value, and form. Now that we've filled up your recipe box with all the different ingredients, it's time for you to cook something up. So what we're going to do together today is take these 7 elements of art, and each of you is going to cook up your own masterpiece. We're going to go step by step. I'll show you exactly how to do this as we use each of these 7 parts of art to create a masterpiece of your very own. But before we begin, we need to grab our materials. So remember, those that need them can find materials for all of our art adventures out front of the museum all day, every Thursday. Out front of our atrium entrance, you can grab a material bag just like this. So let's see what we need today. Today what we will need is a large piece of paper. This is all media paper. We'll use this to draw our masterpiece. In order to draw that masterpiece, we need a black crayon. That's a good thing to have, a black crayon. We also will need a smaller sheet of cardstock. Your cardstock is probably white like this. And it's a heavy paper that's kind of thick. You can hear that heavy paper. And if it's curly like this one, just take a moment to curl it back the other side and iron it out with your hands to make that flat. We're going to use this piece of cardstock to create 2 stencils, to create 2 shapes. And we're going to use those 2 shapes to plant the seed for your idea. I'll tell you more in just a moment. There goes our cardstock. Thank you, Miss Jennifer. Our cardstock. And then 2 more things. A pair of scissors to cut out our stencil shape from our cardstock. And then lastly, you can decide how you'd like to add color. If you have crayons, you can use crayons to add color. If you have pastels from our Degas figure drawings, you can use pastels. I'm going to use today a set of tempera cakes. You might also have watercolors. You can decide how you want to add color to your parts of art masterpiece today. Let's begin though. I'm going to use this big sheet of paper so that everyone can see very clearly. And before we begin, we need to create those 2 stencil shapes. We're going to create 2 stencil shapes. We're going to use those 2 shapes to plant the seed for your idea. So here's what we'll do first. Take that piece of cardstock, if you will, please, in your studio at home. Fold it over like that. Give it a crease. Maybe fold it back the other way. Give it another crease. This is a fast way to separate that piece, this large piece, into 2 pieces. And I can give it a tear. If you have trouble with that, you can use your scissors, or just give it a tear, because we don't need to have a straight edge. What I'd like you to do is then we're going to take these 2 shapes, and we're going to turn one into a geometric shape, a math shape with hard edges, and one into an organic shape, one of those free-form shapes, like a bug that hits your windshield. So I'm going to take this one, and you can decide what kind of shape you want. If you want to, you can use your black crayon to draw it, but I think I know some geometric shapes, so I'm just going to freestyle it. And I'm going to cut a big triangle with 3 sides. All different kinds of triangles out there. Them old isosceles triangles, right triangles, acute triangles, maybe. Well, that's a good looking triangle. Go for that triangle. Now, organic shapes, which are fun and freeform, they can do their own thing. So now I can really freestyle this one. And I'm just creating a funky shape. I'm not even thinking about it. I can even do this with my eyes closed. I'm letting this funky shape get funky on its own. just like that. So now I have two shapes, an organic shape and a geometric shape, just like that. We're going to use those two shapes as the seed for our idea. If you will, please, keep cutting your shapes. I'm going to make two larger shapes since I have a large piece of paper. I think I need two bigger shapes. So while you're cutting your shapes, I'm going to cut some big shapes so that everybody can see. It's time for me to plant the seed for my idea. So I'm using this, I'm using this thin cardboard, which is good for making stencils. So if you want to make more stencils, put a recycling bin and look for maybe an old cereal box, cracker box, pancake mix box, that kind of box, those kind of pantry boxes. Those make great stencils. Okay, now when we plant our seed for our idea, what we were going to do then is we're going to look at those, we're going to place these shapes onto our piece of paper, and then you're going to use your imagination in those 7 parts of art to transform those two shapes into something new. You can transform those two shapes into something we recognize, like a horse, a banana, or a helicopter, or you can turn those two shapes into something completely abstract or non-objective. That'll be up to you. And we're going to use those 7 parts of art to mix them all together in our recipe to transform each of those shapes. So I'll need your help, because you maybe in the comments below when I plant my seed, I'd like you in just a moment. I'm going to hold up my piece of paper, and we're going to look at those shapes, and maybe you can tell me some ideas. How can I transform those two shapes to represent something I recognize, like maybe an Olympic swimmer? How can I take these two shapes and turn them into something maybe like a duck landing on the pond? How can I take those two shapes and maybe turn them into something like a lumberjack, big burly lumberjack? How can you take those two shapes and turn them into a young John Bonham? So let's plant the seeds. I'm going to take my two big old shapes. You take your two shapes, and I like to be surprised when I plant this seed. I like to close my eyes. Take those two seeds, those two shapes, and we're going to plant the seed for our idea. Slap them down anywhere. And those two shapes can overlap. Those shapes can be far apart. They can even go off your paper. Take those two shapes, slap them down on your piece of paper. And let's grab your black crayon and trace around the edge of those two shapes with around the edge of those stencils with your black crayon. So this is going to be the seed for my idea. So take a look at this funky new shape. Anybody out there in Art Adventures land, Miss Jennifer?
No comments yet.
No comments yet. So take a look at these two shapes. And here's what I like to do. And you do this with your two shapes if you're following along. Take those two shapes and look at them for a moment. Stare at them, maybe close your eyes, squint your eyeballs. Hold out your thumb like an artist. Take a look at those two shapes and ask yourself in your mind's eye, in your imagination, how can I use shape, line, texture, space, color, and value to transform those two shapes into something new? Stare at it for a moment. Then take your two shapes and rotate them. Cook up some more ideas. Maybe now you see something you didn't see before. Squint your eyes and think about how can I use shape, line, texture, color, form, value, the elements of art to transform that to something new. Turn it again. Cook up some more ideas. Cook up lots of ideas. Often our first idea may not be the best idea. So cook up lots of ideas in your imagination and choose the tastiest one. This time maybe hold that piece of paper right up against your nose and slowly pull it away until an idea pops in your brain. One last time. And your idea can either be objective something we recognize, like a lumberjack. Or if you're having trouble thinking of an idea of something that we recognize.
Ice cream cone or a graduation cap?
You're right, those are great ideas. If we're having trouble thinking of an idea that we recognize, like an ice cream cone or a graduation cap, we can mix up all of our parts of art and create something that's completely abstract. Purely non-objective. Sometimes those are the most fun to add color to. So, that's some good suggestions out there. I heard an ice cream cone or a graduation cap. So let's put this down, and now watch me for a moment. Each of you is going to come up with your own idea using your own recipe with the same parts of art. But watch me, and I'll give you some tips on how to take that idea and take it out of your brain and put it onto that piece of paper. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to think about those suggestions. I'm going to think about what kind of lines and shapes and texture, space. What can I add to transform these shapes into that idea that was suggested? So I'm going to start by adding some lines of my own, and then some of these lines are going to come together. We'll start to make shapes. And as you notice, as I'm doing this, as I'm making these lines, do you notice how soft those lines are? It might even be hard for you to see. This is how artists work out ideas. This is sketching, right? When we sketch, we push very softly. And I'm drawing quickly. And some of these lines may not be permanent. I'm sketching, and as I'm sketching quickly and drawing softly, I'm figuring out where things are going to go. So if there's a mark I'm not that fond of, or a mark that I don't need to keep, as I draw this person's face, all the marks that they're practice marks, the marks that I'm not that fond of, I'll ignore. And then, once I know where lines are going to go that are going to be permanent, I'm going to come back in and push on top of all my lines that I want to keep and make those lines extra black. Over here on these fingers and the thumb, up to the arm, tank top on this beach-going kid, this beach-going kid's long tongue, and polka dots on this beach-going kid's swimsuit, surfboard on that beach-going kid's front of the beach-going kid's tank top. Let's finish his face, right? Ears, wild hair on this beach-going kid, slobbery tongue. Let's finish our ice cream cone. One of them good cones with the waffle style cone. Let's give it some texture. Texture. Remember texture? We're going to use some lines to describe the texture of that waffle cone. Let's give some lines on that ice cream to describe that ice creamy texture. Maybe that ice cream's even starting to melt and drip. And probably need a cherry on that ice cream cone. Let's think about creating some space. Space is one. Space, we can create that illusion of space, remember. You need to just think about where this beach-going kid is. It's a beach-going kid, it's probably on a beach. So I'm going to create a horizon line, like Grant would. A line where that earth meets the sky. Out here is the ocean, and then maybe there's cliffs and rocks by the beach that we can go jump off later. I'm going to draw the waves as they hit the beach in the distance. These are far away, so I have to make these things small. Maybe there's a palm tree off there in the distance that's teeny tiny. Those things that are far away, make them extra small. Create some distance, some space, maybe some clouds. I always like a good hot air balloon. Might as well put one of those in there too. All kinds of details. Use your art elements to create details, things to look at. Now, remember, if you're having trouble, though, cooking up an idea of something we recognize, like this beach-going kid and that tasty-looking ice cream cone. If you're having trouble thinking of an idea that's objective, something we recognize, and look how I'm going back in, I'm taking a second look and making sure that all my important lines are extra black. Those lines that you want people to see, make them super black. Black, 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 black. Push extra hard, use some muscles, maybe even stick out your tongue as you use your crayon and push down hard to make those extra important lines super black. Create some emphasis to make those lines really pop out, especially important when we begin to add our color in just a moment. We haven't even talked about value yet. Now, if you're having trouble thinking of an idea that's extra, that's objective, something we recognize, like this beachcomber and his ice cream cone, no problem. All you need to do is maybe take your parts of art, or those first two shapes that you planted your seed, maybe repeat them over and over again. Take your parts of art and make crazy funky lines. Maybe just freestyle some shapes to make a composition that's completely non-objective. Sometimes these are the most fun to add color to. And they can create all kinds of energy and expression. Now, before we're finished, so now I've used our parts of art, I've used lines, right? All kinds of lines, descriptive lines, some lines that create some movement with the dripping of the tongue and the dripping of the ice cream cone and the long stretched out arm. We've created some space with things that are close to us in the foreground. This ice cream cone's right in our face, and that hot air balloon is way back in the distance. We created texture on our waffle cone or textury hair. Created some pattern even, texture on our ice cream. What else do we have here? We got shapes, right? We have organic shapes. I see some organic shapes that we up here in the top of my ice cream cone. This triangle shape is a geometric shape. Created some space, but we do need to create color and value. Now, you can add color using crayons, markers, colored pencils, but I'm going to use these temper cakes, which are used kind of like watercolor, and I'm just going to get a start on my color. But I want to show you a couple things. So as I'm using, I'm going to activate my paints here, and I'm going to start. I like when I'm painting, I like to use my big brush for all my big shapes, and I'll save my little brush for the tiny details. Let's give this person some. He's a beach bum, so let's give him some beach blonde hair. And and then every time I change my color, I'm going to rinse off my brush. And as I'm painting, I got to think about what color I want to use, right? This person's on a beach. It's warm on a beach. So let's use some more warm colors. I use that yellow. So I'm going to grab some orange. Maybe, and warm this beach up. Make it an orangey kind of beach back here in the background. Starting to sweat already. Orangey kind of beach. And when I'm using my big brush, if you're painting at home, big brush is great for those big things. I don't have to paint fast, but I can paint smart, right? I can paint these big areas more efficiently when I'm using that big old brush. Feeling like you're bald Bob Ross right now, painting this here beach scene. Hope he would be proud at least. Let's fill this in. All right, now we're getting pretty warm on that beach, but that ice cream cone is cold, right? Nice cold ice cream cone on a hot beach. Let's use a cool color on that there ice cream cone. So I'm going to rinse off my brush, give it a little smush, scrape the hairdo here. I've never seen purple ice cream, but I think that's why I want to paint this ice cream purple.
Berry ice cream.
Maybe like a berry ice cream, yeah. This berry ice cream named after my cat. Let's put in this purple. And I'm going to use some brush strokes that kind of look ice creamy, just like that. And of course, the cherry on the sundae. Now, we talked about, before we leave here, I just want to show you, Talked about how artists can mix their colors, mix their primary colors with secondary colors, mix their primary colors with each other to create secondary colors, and mix their primary colors with secondary colors to create tertiary colors. Now I'm going to do some color mixing, and you can do this if you're painting at home, but I encourage you, maybe try mixing your colors right on the paper. I'll show you how. I'm going to start by painting with one color, like blue. Let's make this here, this tank top on this gnarly dude. About to hang 10. Let's paint that tank top blue. Now when we're going to mix our colors right on the paper, I'm going to let that first color dry a second. Maybe even count to 60 or so, or maybe go paint somewhere else and come back and paint with a new color right on top. So I have blue on my brush, but maybe I want to mix blue and red. Some of you know this. Our primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. When we mix blue and red, we'll create violet. So I have blue on my brush. I'm going to rinse that off, give it a little smush in my cup of water, scrape the hairdo on the side of the cup, get it nice and clean, then load up with some red. And when I'm mixing on, because I'm mixing on the paper, that will help keep your paints at home and keep my paints in my paint tray pure color. So I have my red, won't mix with blue on my tray. Now I have red on my brush. Take that brush with the red on the end, on the bristles, paint right on top of your blue. And your blue and your red shall mix to make your very own purple. Almost this is, in that sense, I have more red on my brush on this tank top than I have blue. Kind of a secondary or tertiary color we might call red violet. Now, just because it's bothering me, before we sign off, let's create a bit of contrast. Let's make that surfboard on that the t-shirt pop out. I have this dark red blue, that cool color. Let's create some contrast. I'm going to grab a bright yellow. Yellow is a warm color. Red violet's a cool color. So they're opposite. Fancy art word for opposite. Contrast. Contrast makes things pop out. Let's see if we can make that surfboard pop out by taking lots of yellow paint on my brush, plop it on there, and we'll make that surfboard pop out a little bit. You dig? All right, real quick, if you're painting at home, let's put a couple finishing touches on this. You gotta add in a little bit of blue sky. While I have my blue on my brush, I'm gonna add some blue back here on these cliffs. And then maybe even take a little bit of green. Mix that blue and that green. Make yourself a blue-green. Ever look up at the sky? If we think back to that picture we looked at by Grant Wood. On a blue, sunny day, if you look at the sky, the atmosphere, the value will change. Top of the sky, and when you're a little kid, the people do this, they just put a stripe at the top. That ain't right. We're going to take that dark value and pull it all the way down. So we have a dark value at the top. If you go outside right now, I have no windows, I have no idea, but if it's sunny outside and blue sky, go out and look, the top of the atmosphere will be dark, and when it gets closer to our horizon line, that value will get a bit light. Now, I haven't even used my little brush since we're going for it. Let's keep going for it. Let's give this hot air balloon a little bit of a pop. With my little brush, if you have a little brush, these little brushes are of course perfect for all those little things. It's tiny details. That tongue is not that tiny, so I'll be able to use my big brush. Now if we're doing skin tones, all different kinds of skin tones, light skin tones, dark skin tones. Sometimes all I like to do is add a bit of orange and a bit of blue. For light skin tones, I might start with a bit of orange. Just a touch on the end of my brush with a lot of water. Now if you have crayons or pastels, you can find the skin tone that you need. If we're mixing our own skin tones, sometimes we can start, I like to start with a light skin tone and then I can make that skin tone darker to find just the right skin tone that I need. Since we all have different skin tones. So if I want to make that skin tone darker, I'm going to add some blue. Just a bit of blue, just a touch of blue. And I can continue to add more orange or more blue. Since I don't have a brown on my palette, I have to kind of experiment with my different skin tones. I'm not going to reach. I like this one. That's a pretty good skin tone. Let's try a different, I can make a different kind of brown. That's a question I get a lot. Is how do we make brown? There's lots of different ways to make brown. Mixing two colors that are complementary or opposite. A cool color and a warm color can make brown. So that orange and blue is a good way to make a nice skin tone. We can make it a darker skin tone or a lighter skin tone. Different tones of brown. We can make that orange and blue make a nice warm toasty brown. But we can also use green and red. Those two colors are opposite. So I painted with green. I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. And when I add some red right on top of that green, because those two colors are opposite, they'll mix together on my paper to make a kind of a cool, more of a cool muddy brown. And if it looks too red, I can continue to mix those together or add a bit more green. Experiment until you find what you need. You dig? What else are we missing? Maybe, oh, the dude's shorts, real quick. Come over here. Bermuda Joe needs some Bermuda shorts. We'll make them their shorts purple as well. Then use that little brush. For some yellow polka dots. So, we've used, each of you, I can't wait to see your finished pictures. I hope you'll share them with us by posting them to the event page for today's art adventure. We all use the same ingredients. All the artists in our galleries from all over the world, from all over time, since we've been living in caves. People have been using the same art elements in different ways to express themselves and show people new ideas. I can't wait to see your pictures. Thank you for joining us today for Art Adventures. Please do post your finished images to our Facebook event page for today's adventure, and follow us on Facebook for updates about all of Joslyn's Art from Afar experiences, including virtual camps. New camps for July were recently posted, so check those out. Lots of new camps, new teachers, new materials, new art. I'll see you again next week, right here again. As long as we continue the social distance, I'll bring Art Adventures to you on Facebook Live. Thanks for making art with me today. Adios, artists.